Okay guys, this is a video on writing task 1 for general training students. Task 2 is taught in class, so you guys are either already halfway through task 2 or you've completed task 2, right? But this is going to be focused on task 1. And for both general training and academic IELTS, the task 1 requires you to focus a bit more on the tenses. All right, this is a grammar point. Understanding different tenses is something that you will need to pay more attention to in task 1, because in task 2, most of the time you're going to use the present simple tense, but for task 1 it's going to be slightly different. You are going to have to use the different tenses, especially the past simple tense, and perhaps the past continuous tense. But the point is that the tenses are very important in task 1. Okay, and I probably have told you a few times that in tenses are important not just in task 1 but also in speaking, right? Just take note of that. Speaking part 1 and part 2, you will need to use the past simple tense, the past tenses a lot, and most students don't use it. So just take note of that in speaking part 1, part 2, and for writing task 1, the past tense is normally used. Okay, again, it depends on the question and depends on the context, but most of the time you're going to have to use a bit of your past tense, and therefore it's slightly different from task 2. Okay, so let's get into task 1 right now. Okay, for task 1, this is a format that you can use. Firstly, let me just go through the big picture first. You have the greetings, then after that you will have the first paragraph, which we'll call it the introduction paragraph. Okay, your second, your third, and your fourth paragraphs basically are going to address the bullet points. All right, let me show you what I mean by the bullet points. So these are questions which are past year. They are questions from Cambridge IELTS book. You will actually be seeing this in the Google Drive. When I give you the questions to do for every week, all these questions are there. Okay, but just to show you a question, for example, this will be a question, and you firstly have some introduction here, and then you have 3 bullet points. Okay, so what I mean by the bullet points here, every question has 3 bullet points, 3 things you want to talk about. So that's what I mean by 3 bullet points. So the second paragraph, you start with addressing the first bullet point. All right, the third paragraph, you start with addressing the second bullet point, and the fourth paragraph, you'll start with addressing the third bullet point. Okay, and each of these paragraphs, you should have about 3 to 4 sentences. Okay, so for example, this, say the second paragraph, you're going to address the first bullet point. It says explain why you want to take time off work. All right, so you are going to write about it. You are going to write 3 to 4 sentences. This is going to be the second paragraph. This is going to be a third paragraph. This is going to be the fourth paragraph of your letter. Okay, so don't just spend one sentence writing about this. Explain why you want to take time off work. Okay, what you need to know is this whole thing, this whole letter is, of course, obviously it's made up. All right, and when it's made up, you have the ability to make things up, and you are in charge of how this letter is going to go. You are in charge of the situation. Of course, the general situation is there. Okay, the general situation is here. So it's not that you have a choice of what you're going to write about. No, it's here. But when you go to the details, that's where you are allowed to make things up. All right, so let's look at this. Explain why you want to take time off work. Now, you can just write one sentence. Okay, I want to take time off work, or I want to take a few days off work because I need to relax. Full stop. Now, all right, there's nothing wrong with saying you need to relax, but you're only going to write one sentence. What else can you say? Okay, of course you can. That's the reason why I said you are in charge of how much detail you want to write in this letter. And the point is this: you need 150 words at least. Okay, so task 2 is 250 words minimum. Task 1 is 150 words minimum. If you are going to address this question or explain why you want to take time off work in one sentence, that's not going to reach 100. Your essay is not going to reach, your letter is not going to reach 150 words. Okay, that's the reason why I say, okay, write about 3 to 4 sentences. Okay, so if this introduction is about maybe one sentence, 1 to 2, this is about 1, and then these are 3 to 4, 3 to 4, 3 to 4, it will be equivalent of maybe about 14, 15 or around there, 13 to 15 sentences. And that is good enough most of the time to reach 150 words minimum. Okay, so my point here is it really depends on you as to how much detail you want to put in addressing each of the points in the question, and you should make it a bit more detailed. So don't just say, I need to take a few days off because I want to relax. Full stop. No, that's not going to cut it. You can continue on, write a bit more details, saying, this is because 2 weeks ago I experienced a heart attack, or 2 weeks ago I experienced a fall or whatever, a breakdown, and I visited my doctor, and I went for the second appointment just yesterday, and he told me very clearly that I need to take a break from my work. All right. Now, how many sentences is that altogether? About at least 3 or 4. Okay. So that is the thing I'm trying to say here. Make it long enough, make it detailed so you reach 3 to 4 sentences. Okay. Now, students come back to me and with a letter which is not 150 words, and then I go through this exact same structure I'm teaching you right now, which is let's look at this point, how are you addressing this point, how many sentences have you written, and then they show me 1 or 2 sentences, and then of course I'll tell them the reason why your letter isn't at least 150 words is because why are you writing just 2 sentences? You should be writing, as I mentioned, 3 to 4 sentences. Then they will say something like, oh, I don't know what to say. Yeah, of course, you may not know what to say in the beginning, because anyway, this whole thing is creating a fake story. So it is your choice. Okay, I mean, it is your responsibility, I should say, to make sure there is a lot of details. Okay, don't just stick with a simple kind of thing. You can always add more details to the point you're addressing, to the story at hand. Okay, so then you will be able to reach that 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph per point. Okay, then you have a concluding kind of paragraph, which is about 1 sentence, and then pretty much you will sign off. Okay, all right, let's get into the various parts now. Having gone through the structure of the letter, let's go to the phrases that you can use for the greetings. All right, let's just go through this orange part first. It says, before you start writing your letter, you need to note that the question will not tell you all the information you need to write your letter. Use your imagination to create additional information not mentioned in the question. This is especially so for the first paragraph of an informal letter. For example, if your letter is to a friend to invite him to an event, in the first paragraph you can spend time reconnecting through mentioning something you did last week. That's of course if the situation is such that you met up last week. It's possible that you met up last week. If the situation in the question is such that, you have not met this person for a year or more, then of course you can't talk about last week. Having met up last week. Okay, so read the question carefully, but the point is that you will have to fill in a lot of lot of information that you're going to make up. All right, not just of course for informal letters, but also for formal letters. However, you would also need to use your imagination to add additional details when writing your formal letter, as the question wouldn't describe the full situation. For example, if you're asked to write a letter to your landlord to introduce yourself, you will need to imagine who you are. If the letter is to complain about a faulty product, you will need to describe what product it is and how you came to find out it's faulty. Okay, so fill in the information, fill in the missing parts, because the question is not going to tell you everything that you're going to write about. Okay, so let's go to the three. We're going to talk about three kinds of letters. Okay, firstly, there's a formal letter. There's is what you call a semi-formal letter, and there will be informal letters. Okay, now formal and semi-formal is very much the same. Right, informal letters to your friends, family, relatives, etc., people you know. All right, and formal and semi-formal letters are basically people you don't really know. Either you have not met. Okay, if you really have not met, then it's probably more formal. Okay. Because in your greetings you will say dear sir or madam, right? Because you don't know the person's name. It could be people you know you have met possibly, but of course there's still that formal relationship. For example, maybe your university lecturer, your or a neighbor that you don't really know that well. Okay. Or your landlord or something like that. I mean, there's still that formal relationship. You're not like buddy, you're not so close. All right. So when you're not so close, you don't speak in informal language, basically. All right. So formal letters and semi-formal letters, the difference is just in a formal letter, you would not know the person's name. In a semi-formal letter, you know the person's name, the last name. Okay. So in the greetings for formal letters, dear sir or madam, semi-formal, dear Mr. Mrs. surname, right? And the difference also, it comes in the signing off, where for formal, if you don't know the person's name, yours faithfully. If you know the name, yours sincerely. And for both, you will use the first name and the last name for yourself. So again, you got to make up your name, all right? It doesn't have to be your true name, all right? But put your first name and last name for both of these two letters. And for informal, you just say dear first name. For when you sign off, you could use something like best wishes, best regards, and then you just put your first name. That's all you need. Okay, so three kinds of letters. These two letters are very similar, as mentioned. This, of course, is different. Now, one thing that the examiner is looking for is your tone. All right, so if you go to the band descriptors for writing task 1, for 7, general training presents a clear purpose with the tone consistent and appropriate. So the tone has to be consistent. When I talk, when it talks about tone here, it's mentioning how you relate to the person. How's your tone basically? Are you, if it's a friend, of course, you have a friendly tone. If it's to, if you're writing a formal or semi-formal letter, then it has to be respectful and polite. That is the tone that's expected when you write to someone that you don't really know that well. Okay, so when you email your friends, sometimes you joke around. You could be playful. You could be, you could just write in a way that it's just you, and it's not. It wouldn't be considered rude, but if you write in too informal a way, the tone, all right, then that is the wrong tone when you are writing a formal or semi-formal letter, right? So the tone and appropriate, of course. So that is what the examiner is looking out for, right? All right, another difference is the use of contractions. In informal letters, you can use contractions. For example, you can say, I didn't see whatever, okay? Whereas these are contractions, apostrophe here. Whereas for formal and semi-formal letters, you should not use contractions. You should say something like, you should write, I did not. Okay, so this is the same for writing task 2. You do not want to use contractions. Okay, never use that in writing task 2, right? So grammar and vocabulary are also important, and this is, that's still part of the criteria: lexical resource, vocabulary, and grammar. Right, but of course for task achievement here, it's really the thing you have to focus on is the tone, right? Going back to this, the introduction can just be one sentence. Okay, how would you? Here are phrases. Let me just delete that. Here are phrases that you would use for your introduction, whether it's formal, semi-formal, or an informal letter. Okay, so this is opening your letter, basically of your first paragraph, all right, your introduction. So for formal or semi-formal, I'm right, depending on the purpose, you get straight to the point. When you're writing a formal letter, you get straight to the point, because basically if you're writing to someone you don't know that well, they don't have time for you, in a sense, to you're not going to catch up with them. They may not know you. They just want to know, okay, what is this person writing about? What is the reason for writing? Okay, of course, if it's your friend, if a friend is writing to you, that's not the first thing you think about, but when you don't know a person, all right, if somebody writes to you, you want to know, okay, what is this person writing to me about? There is a purpose. Okay, so you get straight to the point when you write a formal or semi-formal letter. So I'm writing blah blah blah, whatever it may be. Okay, you can use these various phrases for your introduction, which is just one sentence. If it's for the informal letter, you will basically catch up, all right, and you can say a lot of things. You can write a lot of things. Okay, hi, how are you? I've not seen you in a long time. Blah blah blah. Okay, whatever. Same, when you write an email to a friend that you have not talked to a long time, you can write whatever you write. Okay, and that is the first the introduction. Then the rest of these phrases, okay, other phrases to use, these are for the body paragraphs, these are for the bullet points, right? So in a writing task 1 question, you always have 3 bullet points and 3 or 4 sentences for each. You're going to address each point, right? Using about 3 or 4 sentences. And for these bullet points, you can use these phrases here, okay? Depending on what you're using it. Depending on the purpose of, what your whole letter is about. So if you're asking somebody to do something, if you're going to complain about something, if you're going to express satisfaction, to make a request, etc., these are important formal phrases. Now, I put a lot of these here, okay, and you don't see many phrases here because you are familiar with how to write an informal letter, because you've been using English when you email someone or you speak to someone. Okay, then that's the same language. But for formal, if the relationship is formal, if you want your tone to be formal, then it's a bit different from the way you speak to a friend. So I've put a lot of phrases here. Okay, so you can use your own discretion, and choose the phrase that you need to use, right? And then lastly, okay, 3 to 4 sentences each point. Then now we get to the concluding paragraph, which is just going to be another 1 sentence. Okay, here are some phrases you can use. These are some of the general phrases, and in formal letters you can just say, I'm looking forward to seeing you, to hearing from you, or whatever it may be. But think about how you're going to conclude the letter, the formal letter. Maybe you expect a response from them. I await your prompt response. Maybe you just asking them to appreciate their time and attention to this matter. Okay, so use some of these phrases. Now, one thing about a formal letter is the tone is always polite. It is never rude. So even though you may feel very upset about certain thing, or you want to complain, you just write it in as polite a manner as possible. Okay, so you're not going to use expletives or swearing or whatever it may be. You are just going to say something like, if you are not happy about something, want to complain about something, so you have some phrases here. Okay, it is disappointing, I'm very disappointed with whatever. Okay, so now one thing I want to say is that you have to, as I mentioned throughout this video, that you have to be more creative. And if you are going to write 3 to 4 sentences for a point, all right, to expand on a point, you always have to be creative. You don't just want to write one sentence, because it's really up to you. If you don't write more than 150 words, that's a minimum word count. It means that you're not being creative enough. Okay, you're not making things up enough. You're just writing 1 or 2 sentences for each point, which is not good enough. All right. Again, that 3 to 4 sentences is a guideline. It really depends on the length of your sentence. If a sentence has a conjunction and 2 clauses, then it could function as almost like 2 sentences, right? Same for your writing task 2. When I say 1 main point and 2 or 3 supporting sentences, it really depends on how long each sentence is. I'm thinking about a sentence that is about 12 words or so. Okay, so if your sentence is much longer than that, then of course you will not write as many sentences, right? Okay, now we're going to go through the 3 letters that we talked about, the formal, semi-formal, informal. And just to repeat myself, for formal and semi-formal letters, everything is pretty much the same, except for formal letters, you don't really know the person's name, the surname. For semi-formal letters, you do know the surname of the person, okay? And then the difference will be yours faithfully versus yours sincerely. But for both, it is basically formal in terms of tone, right? So let's start with a formal letter first. So this is the question. You have recently bought a piece of equipment for your kitchen, but it did not work. You phoned the shop, but no action was taken. Write a letter to the shop manager. In your letter, describe the problem with the equipment, explain what happened when you phoned the shop, say what you would like the manager to do, right? So because this is, you don't know the manager's name, probably you phone the shop, probably when you phone the shop, you probably talk to somebody else, not the manager, okay? And that's why you are writing to the manager. So it's not as though you know this person already, okay? So dear sir or madam, because you don't really know this person, okay? So this is a formal letter. Introduction, you get straight to the point. What is the purpose of writing? I'm writing to express my dissatisfaction with the washing machine I bought at your store and the poor customer service I experienced a few days ago. Okay, so I got this from, I'm writing to express my dissatisfaction. First paragraph, I'm writing to express my, it's somewhere here, to complain about something. I'm writing to express my dissatisfaction with something. Okay. So that's the first sentence. It's quite a long sentence, right? Then get to the first point. 3 or 4 sentences is going to explain this. Describe the problem with the equipment. Last Tuesday, I bought a Prince LS777 washing machine. Again, this brand and this model is made up from your store. I installed it on the same day, and it was working fine for the first 2 days. However, on the 3rd day, I tried to use it, but it would not start. Very simple. Okay, I did not just say, last Tuesday I bought a Prince LS777 washing machine from your store and I found that it did not work, full stop. Now that will be too short. So I fill it in with more details. I installed it. It was working fine the first 2 days. However, on the 3rd day, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you have to expand it. Okay, explain what happened when you phoned the shop. Immediately, I phoned your shop and spoke with one of your supervisors. He assured me that he would get back to me after a day or 2 and tell me what I could do to get my washing machine replaced. Because I did not receive any call from him, I called your shop again and was again promised a return call. It has been more than 3 days and nobody has called. Right? So again, I'm making this up. I called once, they said they'll call back, but they didn't. And I called again, and then they promised another call, but they didn't. Okay, so rather than just doing it once, maybe you could, rather than just, I just expanded this little story a bit more. 3rd point, say what you would like the manager to do. This has been a very disappointing experience for me. I would appreciate it if you could call me back at blah 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 as soon as you read this letter and let me know how I can get my machine replaced. right? So this, I'm actually telling this, say what I would like the manager to do. Okay, the concluding paragraph, I'll wait your prompt response, and then it's yours faithfully, because this is a formal letter in the sense you don't know the person's name. Okay, the next letter is a semi-formal one. The only difference, as I mentioned a few times already, is the fact that you don't know this person. The fact that you know this person here as opposed to the formal letter. And then because you write this person's name, the surname, you use sincerely rather than faithfully, right? Your neighbors have recently written to you to complain about the noise from your house flat. Write a letter to your neighbors in your letter. Now, if your neighbors complain to you, it means that your relationship is probably not that great. It's probably a neighbor, but you're not really, really close. Okay, so in that case, you can consider it a semi-formal letter. I mean, if your friend has issues with you, you are not going to write letters. I mean, this is not the way it normally happens. Okay, written to you. Okay, I mean, if your friend, you're not going to write to someone to complain, right? You just talk to that person. Okay, so this is a semi-formal letter. I just make up a name, all right? Surname here. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I'm writing, okay, again, straight to the point. I'm writing to sincerely apologize for the loud noise you heard yesterday during my birthday. Okay, this phrase is from here. I'm writing to sincerely apologize for something, or you could say I'm writing to sincerely apologize. You say I would like to apologize, also that's fine. Okay, getting straight to the point. Then explain the reasons for the noise. The reason for the noise is that I was celebrating my 40th birthday party. I have not had a birthday celebration for over 15 years, and therefore I planned a huge party yesterday. I invited over 50 of my friends, and I guess the fun and laughter resulted in the high level of noise. Okay, so again, expand a bit. Talking about having not had a birthday celebration for 15 years. I planned a huge party and I invited 50 of my friends. Apologize. Please accept my apologies for the disruption of your sleep during the night. I did not realize that the noise was heard in your flat until you mentioned it to me this morning. It was not my intention to cause so much trouble to you. Okay, so very polite way of speaking to the person. That is the tone that's expected in such a letter. All right, and please accept my apologies. To apologize for something, please accept my apologies for. And the third point, describe what action you will take. Because of this incident, I promise to refrain from holding big parties at my flat in future. I will also ensure that any events held at my place will not produce so much noise. Then conclusion. Concluding paragraph, once again, I apologize for the inconvenience caused. Yours sincerely, you know the person's name, not faithfully, as before. Yours sincerely, and then your full name, first name, last name. First name, last name, but this is faithfully because this is a formal letter. You do not know the person's name. Okay? Lastly, an informal letter. Last month, you had a holiday overseas where you stayed with some friends. They have just sent you some photos of your holiday. Write a letter to your friends. Okay, so straight away, you know this is a informal letter about your friends. Thank them in your letter. Thank them for the photos and for the holiday. Explain why you didn't write earlier and invite them to come and stay with you. Okay, so dear Jason, John, and Jack, because it's write a letter to your friends. Okay, plural. Of course, we don't really do that nowadays. We don't write letters to 3 people because these. You could write emails to 3 people, but a letter just goes to 1 person. But anyway, that's what it says. Write a letter to your friends. Okay. How are you guys doing? I hope you are all doing great in your studies. Exams are coming, right? Okay. So very informal, catching up. Okay. Then first point, thank them for the photos and for the holiday. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the photos you sent me. I received them yesterday and it was a pleasant surprise. All the pictures also remind me of the great fun we had together, especially at the beach. Thanks so much for having me over and planning the whole trip. Okay, talk about the beach. Talk about the beach. You have to talk about the pictures because the bullet points is thank them for the photos. Okay. And my point, the thing I added here was that they planned the whole trip, Okay, I don't think it said here in the letter, in the instructions, but again, this is inputting something that so you can write about to expand a bit on your points, right? Explain why you didn't write earlier. I'm sorry that I couldn't write to you all earlier. I just finished my final exams. As you know, this is my final year and I had to work extra hard in order to do well. My results for the first 3 years in college was awful. My results were awful. So I had to make up for it this year. I hope everything goes well. All right. So I did not just say, I explained and I kind of elaborated. It's not just about, I did not just say, oh, I'm sorry I couldn't write earlier, I had exams, and I just finished it, full stop. Now that will be very short, but I said, as you know, this is my final year, and then I also put in this thing about how my results were bad, and therefore I had to do well in this final year. Okay. Additional information. Invite them to come and stay with you. Since I'm free now and don't have to study, you realize I use all these contractions here. Okay, contractions. These are okay for informal letters, but not for formal letters. So since I'm free now and don't need to study, I would like to invite you all to come over here. I think your exams will be over in 1 month's time, right? Let me know if you, again, I kind of like put this in, I don't just invite them, but I say, I think your exams will be over in 1 month's time, right? Let me know if you're all able to visit me for a few days. You guys can stay in my guest room. Again, I add more information. You can stay in my guest room. I'm going to plan everything for you, right? And you conclude, I look forward to your positive response and best regards. Okay. And then your best regards. Okay. And then just your first name. You don't have to have first name and last name. Okay, so that's it. All right, so these are the 3 letters. The formal and the formal and the semi-formal are very similar, and then you have an informal letter. You can use contractions in your informal letter. You can't use contractions in your formal or semi-formal, and use the phrases for formal and semi-formal that I've given you, because these are phrases you don't normally use, but I didn't give you many phrases for informal letters because you're just speaking to a friend, as you would normally. Okay.